Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition to The Shadow Self, A Journey Within. We are very excited if you're listening to our podcast. Hello, Joanne. Are you with us? Joanne is my co-host.
Hi, Todd. It's Joanne. I'm here today again.
How's it going tonight?
Very good. I'm excited to be here. I'm
Yeah.
so excited for our special guest.
Yes, so am I. And I'd like to talk a little bit about our next guest. We are very excited to have her. She is no stranger to the spirit world and to vibrational healing. Some of the things in her background are advanced certified vibrational healer, energy balancing through the chakras, certified hatha yoga teacher. She is a published author, book editor, energy healing workshop teacher, former co-host and associate producer of Transitions Radio Magazine, goddess retreat leader, and a spiritual intuitive and guide. Please welcome Beth Wright of Spirit Works. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Todd. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, we are honored that you're, sharing this time with us. And could you give the listeners a little bit of background about some of those things that I spoke of?
Sure. It's great to hear the list of things that I do because sometimes I forget all of them. But I have been doing vibrational energy healing since 2003. And I started my own business in 2007 here in upstate New York. And my business is called Spirit Works. And I work as a vibrational energy healer. I work by channeling light from source through me, using the 9 different chakras, so the chakra system, to help people awaken to their true selves and to release blocks that are keeping them from ascending or evolving. And I also got my yoga certification in 2010 in the Bahamas when I went to Shivananda for a 200-hour yoga intensive. And I've been a practicing teacher for about 6 years in Hatha Yoga. And I wrote a book called I and I, A Guide to Vibrational Healing and My Transformational Journey to the Light. I wrote that and it was published here in upstate New York. And that's been out for about 6 years now. And there's also an audio version of the book, as well as a Kindle version and paperback. And so all of these things that I do are really to help people become more awakened and aligned with their higher selves.
Sounds really interesting. So we'd like to have Joanne kind of start with some questions about working with the shadow self. Joanne?
So, Beth, when we become enlightened and we move towards enlightenment, we have to move through some of our shadow selves. And sometimes when we do this, there's a battle going on inside of ourselves as well as others because it's an internal dichotomy that some don't like to address because there might be a jealousy, hatred, selfishness, egotistical things that pop up, as we mentioned last week in our podcast. And as I know that you have probably experienced, and what I'm going to throw at you tonight is I would like you to explain and express to us how unconsciously or consciously that can come at us from others. We might have to work through it and see it in ourselves in these things that I have mentioned, and it's called the shadow self, and we have to peel the onion and we have to work through it, and we look at ourselves in the mirror, and as light workers we understand the why, and we work through it, and with the vibrational healing in the chakra systems, and we come to it. But I would like you tonight, if you would, explain how others are attracted to our light and they come to us and their shadow self is drawn to the light and they put their shadows onto us. Do you understand the question?
I think I do, but the way that I'm interpreting it and hearing it, it might be slightly different than the way that you're delivering it. From what I hear is you're saying when people see our light, they project their shadow stuff onto us.
Correct.
But I also feel that perhaps it instead of just projecting, have that vibration within ourselves as well. So there's more of a mirror.
Correct.
So, one of the things to remember here, it's like we are light workers,
Right.
but there is that saying, the bigger the light, the bigger the shadow. So none of the light workers are shadowless, and everyone has the shadow. And it comes from trauma in your life, and depending on how much trauma you have endured in your lifetime, then you have different aspects of the self that are stuck and different points in time when those traumatic events occurred. And that's my belief, my opinion. And so that creates the different shadow selves. And a lot of times when you hold a certain vibration, the other person that you're describing, Joanne, others will be attracted to you, and you'll be attracted to one another because you carry that same vibration that you're coming together to heal and to mirror for each other. And so it can be a very painful process. But the important piece is to not deny your shadow self. And this is what I've come to learn over the past 5 years, is when we blame others and say, they're doing this, but I don't do that, then we will not get through our shadow work and we will be stuck. We have to look to the person that is our mirror and say, okay, what is it in them that I am also mirroring or expressing in my life? And so we have to have humility and be honest when we look at ourselves and say, could it be that I am that as well? And when we look honestly at ourselves and admit to where our behaviors and our patterns are not aligned with the highest and the best, and we peek behind the curtain and see what we don't like about ourselves, which is generally what we don't like about other people, then we can begin to heal the shadow. So it takes brutal honesty with oneself to be able to admit, and look at what is really uncomfortable to feel like, oh, I'm doing that and I don't like that. How can I change that? How can I heal that?
And do you find that a lot of times people don't like to admit those negative words, those negative emotions?
About themselves, absolutely. We live in a culture where judgment is reigns, where we can say, oh, that person is doing that and it's horrible, but I don't do that. And so, people want to feel good about themselves, and that's where judgment comes in, which is unfortunate, because to feel good about themselves, they are putting someone else below them by judging them. And that's not a way to feel good about yourself, by hurting another or blaming another. The way to feel good about yourself is to do the work and clear whatever it is in you that is not in alignment. And then also help. Look around you and see that everyone is working through their stuff, and be there as an aid and assistant to help others clear their stuff as well, without that judgment, because judgment only acts to separate instead of unite. And we are all in this boat together until every single one of us gets out together. We can't get out without all of us getting out off this karmic wheel.
I truly believe that, and I agree that it's a chain of events, and it is the trauma that we are dealt with, and we don't know where it starts, where the shadow starts. We don't know if it's childhood, teenage years, adult years, exactly where the shadow starts. And we have to look at it as individuals. And then when we do start the judgment, as you stated, that is where we have to jump in and say, why are we judging? Why are we picking on that person? Look in the mirror. What is it? So you answered the question beautifully. I one totally on board 100%. And the personality traits, like you stated, what is the personality trait that is attracting that person? And the to elaborate further, it also can be not once in a lifetime, but multiple times we can go this dance with people because we don't learn. That's this. I want to go in depth with you with that. Do you feel that you've gone that round multiple times in your life, that you've had to learn the lesson more than once? Did you? I don't want to use the word pattern, but I'm going to use it because I think the shadow self can develop patterns until we learn. So I'd like you to elaborate on that.
Right. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, the thing about life and maturing and growing older is that you think that you've taken care of or healed something, only to discover that no, I just need to go actually deeper into this, into a deeper layer of understanding, because oftentimes not everything is revealed at the onset. And once you go spiral around to the next level or next layer and deeper understanding, then you can heal it even further to its core, because we're trying to get to the core of the wound of the trauma, which what I have found is generally in childhood. And the reason that the shadow is so unconscious is because when you're a child, you don't have your voice. You don't have a clear understanding of the world. You don't have a full consciousness yet. So things are happening to you, and you don't know how to protect yourself or understand it all or know what to say or how to act to make it different. So then that is the biggest shadow to me, is that baby or that child that holds that trauma and it's left because it doesn't know the words to speak. It doesn't even understand. So, when you grow to be an adult, you have the intelligence, you have the understanding, but you're still dealing with the shadow of a baby or a child that doesn't. So how do you learn to navigate that? It takes many rounds of understanding. And the important part of it is you heal it with love. So at first, it can feel very sad, scary, uncomfortable. There's a lot of anger or rage involved. And when you learn to, as an adult, come to this aspect of the self, the shadow, baby or child, what it really needs and what it's always needed is love and understanding, to be seen, to be heard. So when you when you apply the healing in that way from the heart, then that's when I feel like you're really getting to the core of what that shadow aspect needs for healing.
Perfectly. Todd and I agree on that. Wouldn't you say, Todd? Everything comes from the heart, you just from love. If we could all just center in unconditional love.
Absolutely.
Have you found that a lot of times people feel, or maybe you individually, or on the way to enlightenment or to healing, you feel like you were treated unfairly or unjust, or you're trying to hide a lot of aspects until that light bulb goes off, until you found that it was the child, or until you found that, wait a minute, this can be done in love. My little girl, my inner child just needs love. Did you find that as you went back through your timeline that, wow, I was trying to hide that. I was always stamping my feet in unjust or unfair. And how did you unravel the timeline or come to that realization?
Okay. Well, I'm actually still in the process of doing that now.
Well, yeah, we're going to always be in the process, but I guess maybe where did your light bulb, like, how did your spark, like, that said, that made you start your journey?
What was the aha moment?
Yes.
Well, okay. I have to say I started the shadow journey a while ago, but it's only been recently when I have had that aha moment. And it was understanding that my child self, because I'm an empath, just the same as the two of you are. And when you're empathic, you have a much higher sensitivity, as you know. And so your needs are quite different. Also, a starseed and light worker, which means that I don't necessarily find this planet Earth all that familiar and its inhabitants, and really understand the way that things work here. It's like walking around with this open heart, which is very vulnerable position, where you can always feel like you're getting hurt by everybody.
I understand.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Walking heart, right? We need a shield to go out the door. But really, as the baby of my family of three children, I had a father that was a scientist who learned or decided, he made a conscious choice to not work with his feelings because he saw that feelings changed. They were not reliable. Whereas if you had a scientific fact, you could prove it. There was a theory, there was experimentation, and there was proof. It was an absolute truth to him. But feelings changed. So he just shut off feelings. And so I grew up with a father who did not validate any of my feelings at all. And that was very harmful. I can't blame him because he didn't do it on purpose, thinking, oh, if I do this, this will affect my daughter this way. He just made his choices for himself. But that created a lot of problems for me in my life where I wasn't able to learn how to trust my own feelings because they were never validated growing up. So I saw that as a young girl and a child, I was not seen for who I was because I basically was a ball of emotions. I was not understood. I was not validated, and I was not heard. And so that's traumatic in itself for a child. And when you look at children whose feelings aren't validated, what you see is a lot of rage that can occur. So take, for example, this Me Too movement that we're having in America right now. And I'm not sure if it's considered worldwide at this point, the Me Too movement. But what I've seen is that men in our culture in America, as young boys, were basically told it's not okay to feel. And so they were told to buck up and swallow their feelings and just be men. And so what that created was a bunch of men and younger boys and men who weren't allowed to feel. And what do they do with all those feelings? They repress them because they weren't allowed to have them. And repressed feelings can come out in rage, anger, violence, rape. And so that's the culture that we have created, which we are now working to undo. And we need to give boys a chance to feel and to allow them to feel and to validate their feelings. And we need to do that for all the children, boys and girls. Validate feelings because feelings are the language of the heart, so that we can change our society into a more heart-based society. So I kind of got off on a tangent there, but I will.
No, that is perfect because that is part of where we are directing the shadow self and our podcast, that we want the boys, the men, to come forward to know that they're safe here on this podcast, that is exactly what we want in this, that the men, the boys, to address their feelings, that they're safe here, that we are for all. We are for a heart based, all men, women, boys, children. We are for all one love here. We want the feelings, the love, the energy to be all equal here.
In light of this discussion about our child self, Beth, would you have any tips or advice that you could give parents today? Since when we grew up, as you explained, your father didn't validate your feelings and really he misunderstood you. And same with my dad, he misunderstood me. And as you said, we were empaths, so we kind of feel things differently. Would you have any tips or advice for parents today on how to work with their children, with the shadow self?
Sure. I have to make a claim here that I'm not a mother. I do not have children of my own, except for fur babies. I've always had animals. But I do have clients come in at times, and I will bring through messages from spirit for them, guidance as perhaps. So I do have one client whose son has this high extrasensory perception, and we cannot apply our as parents. It's best not to apply the old paradigm parenting rules for the kid. So I think it would just be, really listening to the child and seek to understand what they are experiencing. And I think that's a general rule of thumb for all of us in getting along with one another is we know what we experience, right? But we generally can't look through the lens or the eyes of other people and know what they're experiencing. So the best thing we can do is talk to them and truly listen to understand. And this is what I'd say with the children. What are their needs? What are they asking for? What are their feelings? What are they uncomfortable with? Ask them what the child needs to be happy. And if a parent can do that with the child, and if the child doesn't take advantage of the parent, but and is honest with the parent, then that's a wonderful way for the parent to learn about these new types of children that are coming into the world that are have a different DNA, that are part of the new paradigm, and here to, I think, assist the planet in awakening. So really just talk, listen, and seek to understand their needs.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Just come from the heart center and just, love them unconditionally and just try to understand where they're coming from and just to guide them. I think that's wonderful advice.
Thank you.
I I agree. I have two children and I have raised them that way. I've been criticized for it, but I have two awesome adult children and I see them going out into the world that way. And I raised them exactly like you said. What do they need? What are they feeling? What is the day to day? And raise them from the heart and hug, show their emotions, show their feeling. If it's anger, if it's sadness, if it's jealousy, I let them experience it all. Doesn't matter if you want to have rage, if it's a good or bad. Didn't matter what society said. They grew up with me in my household. They were allowed to express it and feel it, and it made for better adult children. So I do have children out of the two of you, and I agree 100% with you, what you said, Beth, and the new children coming in, if we could have that way, because we're not in the old generation of parenting where they're be seen but not heard. They're not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to have feelings. They are because they're little humans and they're smarter than us, some of them. So I agree 100% with that, Beth, and thank you for taking it in that direction.
And I have to say, your kids are lucky that they have mom like you that allowed them that said, they could feel whatever they wanted to feel and it was okay. Because I don't think that happens enough. And that's exactly what's needed for well-adjusted kids.
Absolutely.
So that was the end of my questioning. So Todd, if you have any questions.
No, I think this discussion has been really enlightening. I have found some great truth nuggets and some great advice. Beth, you hit it right on the nail head with what you talked about. And I think this has been a great discussion. So from this point, would you like to tell the listeners how they might get in contact with you? Email, website?
Sure, thank you. So I have a website and it's called energyhealingteacher.com. And all of my information is on there, my email, my phone number. So it's energyhealingteacher.com. You can contact me that way. And I also on there have a book that I wrote called I and I, a guide to vibrational energy healing and my transformational journey to the light that I mentioned before. So that's available on Amazon if any people are interested in reading that.
Awesome. I will have all that information for you listeners in the podcast show notes. So all that information will be there. So if you would like to get in contact with Beth, she would be more than happy to answer any questions. Would you have any truth nuggets or any piece of advice for anyone that might be interested in working with the shadow self?
Sure. As I myself have experienced, it's working with the shadow self is probably one of the most challenging things that you will do in your lifetime. And I know that a lot of people do not want to go there because it's too painful. But if you don't work with the shadow self, you will remain stuck. And if you have the courage to work with your shadow self, you will find that on the other side of it is freedom. Freedom from being stuck in the past, from repeating patterns that frustrate you, from releasing self-sabotaging behaviors, so that you really can come to a place where you are happy with yourself, a wonderful relationship with yourself. And that is the most important relationship that you will have in your lifetime, is loving yourself, and everything else is born out of that. So the shadow work is peeking behind that curtain and seeing all the parts of you that are really yucky or scary or uncomfortable, and loving them all and embracing them and integrating them into yourself as a whole being, so that you can live a life that is joyous and free and whole.
That is awesome advice, Beth. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure being on your program. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, this wraps up for our episode this evening. Thank you, all the listeners, for tuning in this evening. We will see you next time. Have a good evening.